Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 127. Today's episode is going to cover a couple of mana abilities that show up on a few different cards in Magic, and they have some wording that makes it so that they care about what other things are able to produce in order for us to know what they are able to produce. Examples of some of these cards would be like Exotic Orchard and Fellwar Stone, that both say that they can tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. And then also a card like Reflecting Pool that says it can tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land you control could produce. Fans of the bonus questions, be sure to stay till the end. So let's get into some scenarios and start with an easier one. You play Exotic Orchard as your first land for the game, and then all 3 of your opponents each play an Exotic Orchard for their first land. So now, with all 4 players all controlling only Exotic Orchard and no other lands, a very likely scenario, what do they produce when tapped for mana? In this case, none of them are able to produce any mana of any kind, but then on your second turn, you play a forest. What are the Exotic Orchards able to add? Is there any difference? Can yours add something that theirs can't, and vice versa? Clearly, your opponent's orchards are able to add a green mana, and then, because of that, now your orchard is able to add a green. So not too difficult. So let's increase the difficulty a little bit. You control Reflecting Pool, and then you play Gemstone Caverns as your second land that you control. And the Caverns does not have a luck counter on it. What colors of mana is your Reflecting Pool able to add? Now, before I answer this one, I also want to give one other scenario. You control your Reflecting Pool, and then you also control a Vivid Grove, which says it enters the battlefield tapped with 2 charge counters on it, and then it has 2 activated abilities. One says tap to add a green mana, and then the other says tap and remove a charge counter from Vivid Grove to add 1 mana of any color. You have already used the Grove twice now, and it has no more charge counters on it. So what colors is your Reflecting Pool able to add? Now, in the Cavern scenario, your Reflecting Pool would not be able to add any colored mana. However, in the Vivid Land scenario, your pool would actually be able to add any of the 5 colors of mana. So why is this? In both of these scenarios, the Caverns nor the Vivid Land are able to actually, at that time, add any colored mana when tapped, yet they have different results for their respective Reflecting Pools. So let's get into the why. We must take a look at the comprehensive rules in section 106.7 that says some abilities produce mana based on the type of mana another permanent or permanents could produce. The type of mana a permanent could produce at any time includes any type of mana that an ability of that permanent would produce if the ability were to resolve at that time, taking into account any applicable replacement effects in any possible order. Ignore whether any costs of the ability could or could not be paid. If that permanent wouldn't produce any mana under these conditions, or no type of mana can be defined this way, there's no type of mana it could produce. So the answer to both of these scenarios is in that one section of the CR. The reason that the Caverns scenario makes the pool add no colored mana is because it is a replacement effect of the ability that causes it to add mana of any color as long as the Caverns has a luck counter. And CR 106.7 said that we do have to take into account any applicable replacement effects. Then, with the Vivid Land scenario, the pool is able to add any color because CR 106.7 states that we ignore any costs that couldn't be paid at that time. And we know that the removal of a charge counter is a cost on the Vivid Land because it's located before the colon on the ability. It's on the left side of that colon. So even though it has no charge counter to remove to pay the activation, the game only cares what colors could be produced if that ability were to happen right then and there. Okay, now on to the bonus question. Your opponent controls a Charmed Pendant, a March of the Machines, and an Ashaya Soul of the Wild. Charmed Pendant says tap and mill a card for each colored mana symbol in the milled card's mana cost. Add 1 mana of that color. Activate only as an instant. Then March of the Machines says each non-creature artifact is an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its mana value. And then Ashaya Soul of the Wild says non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So their pendant that they control is now a land artifact creature, forest. And that is the only land that they control other than Ashaya, who makes herself also a forest. You control Exotic Orchard. And when you tap the Orchard for mana, is it able to produce any color other than green? The top of the card of your opponent's library, the opponent that controls the pendant, the top of their library is currently a Chromat, which is all 5 colors. So could you tap your only land that is Exotic Orchard for anything other than a green mana? Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta!